The wrench slipped from Owen's hand and clanged against the metal floor, the sound echoing through the massive empty space like a lonely bell. He bent down to pick it up, his knees protesting after 3 hours of checking every structural joint in Hangar Bay 7. This place was a monument to wasted potential, at least according to everyone else on Orbital Station Meridian. Owen had heard all the jokes. The Centaurans called it the human vacuum, where credits went to die. The Vortian engineers laughed about air conditioning for ghosts whenever they passed by. Even the maintenance crews from other sections avoided assignments here, preferring the cramped but bustling cargo bays where actual work happened. But Owen never minded the silence. After losing his wife and daughter in the colony wars 5 years ago, he had learned to appreciate empty spaces where memories could breathe. He moved to the next support beam, running his scanner along its surface. The readings came back green, same as always. This hangar could have housed a dozen small ships or been converted into living quarters for 200 people. Instead, it sat here collecting dust because the human administrators had insisted on keeping it exactly as designed. Commander Rillith, the station's four-armed Centauran leader, brought it up at every quarterly review. Why did humans need so much unused space? Why not optimize? Why not maximize efficiency like every other civilized species? The humans always gave vague answers about emergency protocols and future expansion. The real reason was simpler and harder to explain. Sometimes people needed room to exist without purpose. Sometimes empty meant possibility. A soft scraping sound froze Owen mid-scan. He turned slowly, eyes searching the shadows near the far wall where old shipping containers were stacked like forgotten toys. The sound came again, deliberate this time, followed by a small whimper that made his chest tighten. Owen set down his equipment and walked toward the containers, each step careful and quiet. He had learned in the war that frightened things could be dangerous, but they could also just be scared. As he rounded the largest container, he saw them. A Kethran female crouched in the corner, her gray-furred body wrapped protectively around three small shapes. Her large, dark eyes fixed on Owen with the kind of terror that came from knowing you had nowhere left to run. The younglings pressed against her belly, their tiny faces barely visible in the dim light. All four of them bore injuries, cuts, bruises, and what looked like burn marks on the mother's shoulder. Owen stopped walking and slowly raised his hands, palms out. The Kethran were a prey species, evolved on a world where showing teeth meant aggression and sudden movements meant death. He had worked with two of them in the colony before the war. Good people, gentle people, the kind who never hurt anyone and somehow always ended up hurt themselves. "I won't call security," Owen said quietly. "You're safe here." The female's ears twitched, but she didn't move. Her breathing came fast and shallow. One of the younglings made a soft chirping sound, and she pulled them closer. Owen took a slow step backward and sat down on the floor, making himself smaller and less threatening. "My name is Owen. I work here alone most days. Nobody comes to this hangar except me." He kept his voice level and calm. "The Dominion Compact is looking for you, aren't they?" The female's eyes widened, and a low whine escaped her throat. "It's okay," Owen continued. "The Compact doesn't have jurisdiction on this station, but I'm guessing you didn't come through official channels." He saw the truth in her expression. Refugees who went through official channels got sent back to whatever they were running from. The galaxy's bureaucracy had 1,000 ways to look efficient while doing nothing good. He stood up slowly and walked to his tool bag, pulling out a ration bar and a water pouch. He set them on the floor between himself and the family, then backed away again. "I'll bring medical supplies tomorrow. Real food too, not just these terrible rations." He smiled, though he kept his teeth covered. "There are blankets in the storage room. I'll leave them by the door tonight after my shift ends." The female stared at the food, her body trembling with the war between hunger and fear. Owen turned to leave, then paused. "This hangar is a joke to everyone on the station. They think it's useless, empty space. That means nobody pays attention to it. Nobody cares what happens here." He looked back at her, meeting those terrified eyes. That makes it the safest place on Meridian. He walked away without waiting for a response, his mind already working through logistics. Medical supplies could come from the expired inventory that regulations said should be destroyed, but never was. Food could be requisitioned as testing samples for the atmospheric recyclers. Blankets and basic necessities could be written off as equipment losses. The station's other species saw human inefficiency as a flaw. They didn't understand that sometimes inefficiency was just kindness wearing a disguise. Sometimes the system's waste was actually its mercy. As Owen reached the hangar doors, he heard a small voice behind him. "Shiva, my name is Shiva." He turned and nodded once. "Welcome home, Shiva." The doors sealed behind him with a soft hiss, and Owen headed to the supply depot. The mocked hangar had just found its first real purpose, and he had work to do. 2 weeks had changed everything and nothing at all. Hangar Bay 7 still looked abandoned to casual inspection, but Owen knew every hidden corner now held life. Shiva's wounds had healed into pale scars, and her younglings had stopped flinching at every sound. They even played sometimes, their soft chirping laughter making the vast space feel less lonely. Owen was rerouting a power conduit behind a stack of equipment when he heard the new sound. Not Catherine chirping. This was heavier, more desperate. Footsteps running, then stopping, then running again. The pattern of someone being chased by their own fear. He emerged from behind the equipment to find a young Vortian male pressed against the wall near the entrance, his blue-tinted skin slick with sweat. The kid couldn't have been more than 20 cycles old, barely an adult by any species standard. His eyes darted around the hangar like a trapped animal looking for the next cage. "Please," the Vortian gasped. "I just need somewhere to hide for a few hours. They're checking the docking bays. I'll leave after, I swear." Owen recognized desperation when he saw it. He had worn that same expression the day he learned his family's colony transport had been destroyed. "Who's looking for you?" "Recruitment officers." The kid's voice cracked. "The Vortian mandate has a new conscription law. Everyone my age gets 5 cycles of military service. They're sending us to the border conflicts." He laughed, a bitter sound that belonged to someone much older. "They call it service. Everyone knows it's just meat for the grinder." Owen thought about the border conflicts. He had seen the casualty reports. The Vortian mandate treated their soldiers like ammunition, spending lives to gain inches of worthless territory. "What's your name?" "Trell." "Trell, those recruitment officers won't stop looking after a few hours. You know that, right?" The kid's shoulders sagged. "I know, I just needed time to think, figure out where to go next." His voice dropped to a whisper. "There is nowhere, is there?" Before Owen could answer, a small gray-furred shape appeared from behind a container. One of Shiva's younglings, the brave one who always explored too far from their mother. The child walked right up to Trell and held out a small piece of fruit, one of the rations Owen had brought. Trell stared at the offering, then at Owen, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding. "You're hiding refugees." "I'm maintaining an unused hangar," Owen said carefully. "What I see or don't see during my maintenance is my business." The sound of the door opening made both of them turn. Owen tensed, ready to create some distraction, but relaxed when he saw Dr. Amara Okonkwo walk in carrying 2 bags of medical supplies. She stopped short when she saw Trell, her dark eyes moving from the Vortian to the youngling to Owen. "I can explain," Owen started. Amara set down her bags and smiled. "You found more strays, good. I brought extra bandages." She walked over to Trell and started examining him with the efficient calm of someone who had seen too much suffering to be surprised by more. "You're malnourished. When did you last eat a real meal?" Trell looked between them, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "It's okay to be confused," Amara said gently. "Most species don't understand what we're doing here. They think helping strangers is inefficient." She pulled out a scanner and checked his vitals. "We think leaving people to suffer is inefficient. Different priorities." Owen had known Amara for 3 years. She was the station's primary care physician, the one who worked double shifts without complaint and somehow always had time to listen. He had suspected she might understand, but he hadn't been ready to risk exposing Shiva's family. Now he was glad the choice had been made for him. "How long have you known?" he asked. "About a week. You requisitioned expired antibiotics using my authorization code. Not very subtle." She finished her scan and pulled a nutrition pack from her bag. "Eat this slowly. Your system needs to adjust." Trell took the pack with shaking hands. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. I could be a criminal." "Are you?" Amara asked. "No." "Then you're not a criminal. You're a kid who doesn't want to die in a pointless war." She turned to Owen. "We need to establish a better system. I can handle medical care and supply requisitions through proper channels. You focus on the physical space and security. We'll need help with power management, though. The draws are getting noticeable." As if summoned by the mention of power, the lights flickered. A moment later, a Glishan engineer appeared in the doorway, her crystalline skin reflecting the overhead lights in rainbow patterns. Prill had worked on Meridian longer than anyone, her people's extended lifespan making her the station's living memory. "The power grid shows unusual activity in this sector," Prill said, her voice like wind chimes. "I came to investigate the malfunction." Her multifaceted eyes swept the hangar, taking in Shiva emerging from the shadows, the younglings, Trell holding his nutrition pack, and the two humans standing protective guard. Owen waited for the security call, the report, the end of everything they were building. Prill walked to the nearest power junction and opened the access panel. "The problem is inefficient routing. I will correct it." She began rewiring connections with practiced ease. "I will also install better dampeners so your power usage appears normal to automated systems." "You're helping us?" Owen asked. Prill's crystalline features couldn't smile, but her tone warmed. "My people were refugees once before we found our home among the stars. We remember what it means to need sanctuary." She closed the panel and straightened. "Besides, humans have always been kind to Glishans. We return kindness with loyalty." Owen looked around the hangar. 3 helpers now, 7 refugees counting Trell, a network forming from nothing but shared compassion. Amara put a hand on his shoulder. "We're going to need more blankets." Henry Liu arrived at the hangar carrying 3 boxes of materials that station regulations declared worthless. Seeds past their germination guarantee date. Soil compounds mixed incorrectly and marked for disposal. Hydroponic equipment deemed obsolete by newer standards. To everyone else on Meridian, this was garbage. To Henry, it was possibility. "Amara said you needed a botanist," he announced, setting down his boxes with a satisfied grunt. "I brought the rejects." Owen looked up from installing sound dampeners behind a false panel. Rejects. Seeds that didn't meet the optimal 95% growth rate. Equipment that's only 80% efficient instead of the required 90. Henry opened a box and pulled out a handful of seed packets. "The galaxy has forgotten that 80% of something beautiful beats 100% of nothing." Shiva approached cautiously, her younglings trailing behind her like curious shadows. She looked at the seeds with obvious confusion. "You grow food." "Sometimes," Henry said, "but mostly I grow hope." He held out a packet to her. "These are sunflowers from Earth. They're completely impractical. They take up space, require extra water, and produce seeds that aren't very nutritious. But when they bloom, they look like pieces of the sun growing from dirt." The youngest of Shiva's children reached out and touched the packet with one small finger. "Sunflowers," the child repeated carefully. Henry's smile could have powered the station. "Want to help me plant them?" Over the next week, a corner of the hangar transformed. Henry worked with the refugees, teaching them to prepare soil and plant seeds with the kind of patience that came from years of watching things grow. Trell proved surprisingly good with the hydroponic systems, his Vortian engineering background making him natural at managing water flow and nutrient balance. The concept baffled most of the station's other species. When a Rathani supply officer asked why humans were growing decorative plants in a hangar, Henry had simply said they were conducting atmospheric studies. The officer had walked away shaking his head at human wastefulness, never questioning why atmospheric studies needed tomatoes and roses. "My people had gardens once," a new voice said from the shadows. An elderly Rathani emerged, moving slowly on legs that had carried them across too many years and too much pain. "Before the purification laws, before they decided our beliefs were inefficient." Henry turned, his hands still dirty from planting. "You're welcome to help, we have plenty of seeds." The Rathani elder, who introduced himself as Kesef, settled onto a cushion that Amara had brought. His three-fingered hands trembled as he accepted a seed packet. "The Dominion Compact burned our temples. They said meditation was wasted time that could be spent in production." He looked around the growing garden. "This feels like a temple." Owen watched from across the hangar as the group worked together. 7 species now, 12 individuals, all moving around each other with the careful grace of people learning to trust again. The younglings played in the dirt, their laughter mixing with the soft music that Kesef hummed while planting. Prill had done more than just fix the power systems. She had installed lighting that mimicked natural day-night cycles and acoustic panels that made the space feel warm instead of hollow. The hangar was starting to look less like a storage facility and more like a home. "The inspection is in 3 days," Amara said quietly, appearing beside Owen. She held a tablet showing Commander Rillith's latest demands for efficiency reports. "We're ready," Owen replied, though his stomach tightened. They had prepared false reports showing structural testing and atmospheric monitoring. Everything had been designed to look like legitimate research while hiding the truth in plain sight. Henry joined them, wiping dirt from his hands. "We harvested the first radishes today. Nothing fancy, but they're real and they're ours. The kids were so excited they wanted to sleep in the garden." He paused. "This is working, Owen. We're actually building something here." "If we survive the inspection," Amara muttered. "We will." Owen said it with more confidence than he felt. "Rillith expects human inefficiency. We'll give her exactly what she expects to see." The next 3 days blurred together in careful preparation. They created elaborate charts showing atmospheric composition over time. Owen documented every structural test he had actually performed, padding the reports with unnecessary technical details that would bore any inspector to tears. Amara compiled medical data on how humans responded to different air recycling methods, using real research to hide the fact that they were actually tracking refugee health. When inspection day arrived, Commander Rillith entered the hangar with 2 assistants and an expression that suggested she expected to find something wrong. Her forearms moved in the Centauran gesture for disapproval as she looked around the space. "Still empty," she observed, "still wasteful." Owen handed her a data pad. "Actually, Commander, we've made significant progress on our atmospheric studies. You'll see in Section 7 that we've identified 3 potential improvements to the station's recycling efficiency." Rillith's eyes narrowed, but she took the pad. Her assistant spread out, scanning the walls and checking equipment. Owen's heart hammered as one assistant moved close to the garden area, but Henry had hidden it behind stacked containers that read "Biological samples authorized personnel only." The inspection lasted 2 hours. Rillith asked questions that Owen answered with carefully rehearsed technical explanations. She complained about the power usage, and Prill's modifications held up under scrutiny, showing normal readings. She demanded to know why the space still wasn't being optimized for other purposes. "The research is ongoing, Commander," Owen said. We're documenting long-term environmental impacts. It requires patience. Rilith made a disgusted sound in her throat. Patience, of course, very human. She handed back the data pad. Continue your research, but I want monthly updates proving this space is actually useful. After she left, Owen leaned against the wall and let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. Behind the containers, he could hear Shiva's younglings giggling quietly, unaware how close they had come to discovery. Kesef emerged from his hiding spot and placed a weathered hand on Owen's shoulder. A sanctuary's first test is always the hardest. Owen looked at the garden, the living spaces, the families finding peace in what everyone else called wasted space. First of many, probably. Then we'll face them together, Henry said simply. That night, they celebrated the first harvest with a meal shared among 12 souls from 7 worlds. And in the mocked hangar, beauty continued to grow. Security Officer Bate Park lived her life by rules because rules made sense. They created order from chaos, safety from danger, predictability from randomness. She had joined station security straight out of the academy, believing that following proper procedures protected everyone. 3 years later, she still believed it, even when other officers complained about bureaucracy. Which was why the anomalies in Hangar Bay 7's activity logs bothered her so much. The power consumption didn't match the reported usage. Food deliveries to the sector exceeded what one maintenance worker needed. The atmospheric recyclers showed irregular patterns that suggested more than just testing. Small things individually, but together, they painted a picture of something unauthorized happening in that forgotten space. Bates spent a week tracking the patterns. She cross-referenced Owen's shift schedules with supply requisitions. She noticed Dr. Okonkwo visiting the hangar at odd hours. She saw the Glishan engineer Prill making modifications that weren't in any work order. Every piece of evidence pointed to something illegal. Smuggling, most likely. Maybe black market medical supplies or restricted technology. Bate had seen it before on other stations. Good people making bad choices for profit. The thought disappointed her more than angered her. She had worked with Owen on a repair crew once. He seemed decent, quiet, the kind who did his job and went home, but data didn't lie. She ran one more check before filing her report. Security protocols required direct observation before formal accusations. Bate put on her uniform, checked her sidearm, and headed to Hangar Bay 7 during Owen's regular maintenance shift. The hangar doors opened to reveal exactly what she expected, and nothing she was prepared for. Owen stood near a makeshift garden, dirt on his hands, talking with a Rathani elder about proper drainage. A young Vortian male adjusted water lines in a hydroponic setup while 3 small Kethran children played with toy ships made from scrap metal. Dr. Okonkwo sat with a Morphean family, treating what looked like old injuries. Everywhere Bate looked, she saw people. Families. Children. Not criminals, but refugees. Owen noticed her and went very still. The others followed his gaze, and the hangar fell silent except for the soft hum of the environmental systems. Bates' hand moved instinctively to her sidearm, then stopped. These people weren't dangerous. They were terrified. A Morphean child, barely old enough to walk, toddled over to her before anyone could stop them. The child held up a small yellow flower, one of the sunflowers Henry had taught them to grow. "Pretty," the child said in broken standard, "for you." Bate took the flower automatically, her training warring with her conscience. She should call this in, report it. Every refugee in this hangar was unregistered, undocumented, illegal. Some were probably fleeing legitimate legal consequences. The rules were clear. Owen walked over slowly, his hands visible and empty. "You can make your report. I won't stop you." "How many?" Bate asked. 23, 8 species, all running from death in one form or another. Bate looked around again, really seeing it this time. The careful organization, the living spaces built from discarded materials, The garden growing food and beauty in equal measure. The children playing without fear, maybe for the first time in their lives. The Dominion Compact has laws, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Extradition treaties, immigration protocols. The Compact has laws that legalize genocide as long as you call it something else, Amara said quietly, standing up from her patient. Species purification, cultural optimization, population efficiency. Pretty words for killing anyone who doesn't fit their perfect system. Bate knew this. Every security officer knew this. They just didn't talk about it because talking about it meant admitting that following the rules sometimes meant being complicit in evil. Shiva stepped forward, her younglings pressed against her legs. I was a teacher on Kethro's Prime. My mate was a doctor. We had a home, a life. Then the Compact decided our planet's resources would be better used without us consuming them. Her voice shook but didn't break. They didn't kill us directly. They just made laws that meant we couldn't work, couldn't buy food, couldn't exist. We lasted 6 months before we ran. I refused conscription, Trell added. The mandate wanted me to kill people I had no argument with, die for territory nobody needed. Refusing made me a criminal. Staying would have made me a corpse. Story after story. Each person in the hangar had a reason for being there, and none of those reasons involved profit or malice. They had simply refused to die quietly when the law said they should. Bate holstered her sidearm and sat down on a nearby crate, the flower still in her hand. If I report this, they'll all be sent back. The Compact's treaties require it. Yes, Owen said. Children will die. Yes. Bate had joined security to protect people. But who was she protecting by enforcing laws that served as death sentences? She thought about her academy training, all those lectures about duty and protocol. None of them had covered what to do when the law itself was wrong. She looked at the Morphean child who had given her the flower. The kid smiled at her with complete trust, believing that adults with badges kept people safe. Bate had believed that too once. I need 3 days, she said finally. Owen tensed. For what? To get better identity forging equipment. Bate pulled out her tablet and started making notes. Your documentation is terrible. Any competent inspector would spot the errors immediately. I know someone who does real professional work. She looked up at Owen. But I want something in return. What? I want you to teach me how to do this properly. If we're going to break the law, we should at least be efficient about it. Amara laughed, the sound breaking the tension like sunrise breaking darkness. Welcome to the sanctuary, Officer Park. Bates stood up and walked through the hangar, examining their setup with a security officer's eye. She spotted a dozen vulnerabilities, places where their deception could fail. She also saw the care that had gone into every detail. The way the living spaces were arranged to give families privacy. The garden positioned where children could play safely. The medical area set up with proper quarantine protocols. These weren't criminals. They were people who refused to let an unjust galaxy crush the life out of them. And they had found help from humans who understood that efficiency without compassion was just cruelty with better paperwork. We'll need better sensors on the doors, Bates said. Early warning if someone approaches, and these power signatures are still too obvious. I can help with that. Owen extended his hand. Thank you. Bates shook it, feeling the weight of the choice she had just made. She had broken her oath to follow the law. But maybe, for the first time in 3 years, she was actually following her oath to protect people. That night, Bate didn't file a report. Instead, she went shopping for equipment that would keep families safe from a system designed to destroy them. And in the mocked hangar, 23 refugees slept a little easier, knowing one more person had chosen compassion over compliance. The message arrived during breakfast, and Owen felt his stomach drop before he even read it. Official Dominion Compact Seal. Inspection Team. 3 days notice. They were searching for unregistered biological assets, which was the compact's clinical way of saying they were hunting refugees like animals. Owen called an emergency meeting in the hangar. 23 refugees sat in a circle, their faces showing varying degrees of terror. Some had lived through compact inspections before. They knew what discovery meant. "We could scatter," Trell suggested, his voice tight. "Split up, hide in different sections of the station." "They'll have biometric scanners," Bates said. She had spent the last 2 days researching compact inspection protocols. "They'll sweep every section. Splitting up just means getting caught alone." Shiva held her younglings close. "We run again then. Find another station, another hiding place." But her voice held no hope. There were only so many places to run in a galaxy that had decided certain lives didn't deserve protection. Before anyone could respond, the hangar doors opened. Commander Rillith walked in alone, her 4 arms held in a neutral position that could mean anything. Everyone froze. Owen stepped forward, ready to take responsibility, ready to protect his people even if it meant facing charges himself. But Rillith raised one hand to stop him. "I've known about this for 2 months," she said quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. Owen's mind raced through implications, through all the times they had hidden from her inspections, all the careful deceptions. She had known, the whole time. Rillith walked to the center of the group and sat down, her multiple joints folding in ways that looked uncomfortable to human eyes. "I lost my mate and 3 younglings in the Compact's expansion wars. They called it territorial optimization. I called it murder dressed in bureaucratic language." She looked at Shiva. "I know why you run. I know what you're running from." "Why didn't you report us?" Amara asked. "Because I am a station commander, but I am also a mother who understands loss." Rillith pulled out a tablet. "The inspection team answers directly to the Compact. They override my authority. If they find you, I cannot protect you legally." She paused. "But I can protect you practically." Owen felt hope kindle. "How?" "We stage a discovery. During the inspection, we find critical structural damage in the hangar. Emergency evacuation protocols. Everyone must leave immediately while we assess the danger." Rillith showed them her tablet, displaying fabricated engineering reports. "The inspection team will focus on the structural issue. They won't have time for thorough biological scans." "Where do we evacuate to?" Bate asked. "The human crew quarters," Rillith said. "The Compact considers human living spaces too disorganized to search thoroughly. They'll do cursory scans and move on, expecting human chaos to hide nothing important." She looked at Owen. "They're right that human spaces are disorganized. They're wrong about it hiding nothing important." The plan was desperate and relied on prejudice and timing, but it was better than nothing. They had 2 days to prepare. Bate coordinated the logistics with military precision. Each refugee was assigned to a specific human crew member's quarters. They created detailed schedules ensuring no one would be visible during shift changes. Prill modified the biometric dampeners she had built for the hangar, making them portable enough to hide in human living spaces. Henry and Amara packed emergency supplies. Food that wouldn't spoil, medical kits, entertainment for the children who would need to stay quiet for hours. Kesef led meditation sessions, teaching calming techniques to help everyone manage their fear. Owen worked with Rillith to create the most convincing structural failure he could imagine. They identified real weak points in the hangar's framework and stressed them just enough to trigger legitimate safety alerts. The damage would be real, just not actually dangerous. It had to fool Compact engineers who knew their job. The night before the inspection, Owen couldn't sleep. He walked through the hangar one last time, looking at what they had built. The garden stood green and healthy, the plants unaware that tomorrow might end everything. The living spaces held personal touches, small decorations that refugees had made from scraps, claiming space as their own for the first time in months. Shiva found him standing by the sunflowers. No matter what happens tomorrow, you gave us something precious. You gave us time to heal. It's not enough, Owen said. It never is, but it's what we have. She touched one of the bright yellow petals. These flowers shouldn't exist on a space station. They serve no purpose except to be beautiful. Yet here they are growing anyway. She looked at Owen. That's us. We shouldn't exist according to the compact's efficiency models, but we do. We grow anyway. The inspection day began before dawn. Bait moved through the human quarters, helping refugees into hiding spots. A Kethrin family folded themselves into her closet behind hanging clothes. A Vortian couple squeezed under her colleague's bed. The Morphean children, small enough to fit anywhere, hid in storage compartments built into furniture. Owen triggered the structural alerts at precisely the moment the compact team arrived. Alarms blared. Emergency lights flashed. Rilith played her part perfectly, seeming frustrated and embarrassed by the timing. We need to evacuate immediately, she told the compact inspectors. Station safety regulations require full clearance during structural assessments. The lead inspector, a cold-eyed Centauran named Rothak, studied his scanner. Our scans show biological signatures throughout the sector. Owen's heart stopped. Station crew performing the evacuation, Rilith said smoothly. You can verify their identities through official channels. Rothak's eyes narrowed, but protocol was protocol. He couldn't dispute verified crew identities without cause. The inspection proceeded with frustrating slowness. The team examined the structural damage, questioned the engineering reports, and ran scan after scan of the hangar itself. Meanwhile, in Owen's quarters, Shiva's youngest was fighting a cough. Amara had given them suppressants, but children's bodies didn't always cooperate with necessity. Owen watched through his communicator as Shiva held her hand over the youngling's mouth, her eyes wide with terror, while a compact inspector stood 3 meters away in the corridor. The inspector's scanner beeped. He stopped walking. Owen held his breath. The inspector looked at his scanner, then at the door to Owen's quarters. He took 1 step toward it. Then Rilith's voice came over the station-wide comm. Structural breach detected in Hangar Bay 7. All personnel evacuate surrounding sectors immediately. The inspector hesitated, then his communicator buzzed with orders to return to the hangar. He turned and walked away. The inspection lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of hiding, barely breathing, listening to footsteps pass by doors. 6 hours of children staying impossibly quiet, of refugees compressed into spaces too small for comfort, of hoping that prejudice and chaos would be enough camouflage. When the compact team finally left, declaring the station clear of unregistered biologicals, Owen collapsed against the wall of his quarters and let the tears come. Behind him, Shiva and her family emerged from the closet, cramped and scared but alive. It's over, she said. For now, Owen replied, but we survived, we're still here. That night, as refugees carefully returned to their sanctuary, Owen stood with Rilith in the hangar. The structural damage was real enough that they'd actually need to repair it. Why, Owen asked, why risk everything to help us? Rilith looked at the garden, the living spaces, the evidence of lives being rebuilt. Because the galaxy has forgotten what matters: efficiency, optimization, production. These are tools, not values. She placed 1 hand on his shoulder. You humans remember that beauty matters, that kindness matters, that sanctuary matters. Someone needed to help you protect that memory. The repairs would take weeks. The sanctuary would continue. And in a galaxy that measured everything by function, a mocked hangar remained beautifully, defiantly purposeful. Orbital Station Meridian received thousands of official communications every day. Most were routine. Some were important. A very few changed everything. Commander Rilith read the message 3 times before believing it was real. Then she called Owen to her office. There's a loophole, she said without preamble, showing him the tablet. Station regulations allow for designated cultural preservation zones. If I classify Hangar Bay 7 as a research facility studying human community building practices, we can legally house your refugees as research participants. Owen stared at the screen, reading the dense legal language. Research participants. The paperwork is absurd. They'll need documentation as volunteers studying human social structures. We'll need regular reports on cultural integration methodologies and community development patterns. Rilith's four arms moved in what Owen had learned was her version of a shrug. But it's legal. The compact can't touch legal status without cause. You're turning our sanctuary into a research project. I'm turning illegal refugees into legal research subjects. The compact's bureaucracy is vast and complicated. We can use that complexity as a shield. She pulled up another document. I've already filed the preliminary paperwork. You'll be listed as the project administrator, Dr. Okonkwo as the medical researcher, Henry Liu as the environmental specialist. Owen felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not just hope, but actual security. They'll really be safe. As safe as anyone can be in a galaxy that values efficiency over compassion. Rilith looked at him with eyes that held too much experience with loss. But yes, legally protected. The news spread through the sanctuary like sunrise. Shiva cried openly, holding her younglings close. Trell laughed for the first time since arriving, a sound of pure relief. Kesef led a meditation of gratitude that turned into an impromptu celebration. But Owen knew this was just the beginning. Legal protection meant visibility. Visibility meant others would hear about what they had built. He was right. 3 weeks after the designation became official, a Drayan engineer named Corvus appeared at the hangar doors. I heard you have a water reclamation system. I can improve it. He carried tools and diagrams, his scaled face showing determination. My brother was a refugee once. No one helped him. He died waiting for someone to care. I want to help now. A month later, a Quillian teacher named Lissa arrived. I heard you have children here. They should learn. I can teach them. She brought educational materials and a gentle patience perfect for young minds healing from trauma. The sanctuary grew. Not just in numbers, though new refugees did come, but in depth. The garden expanded into 3 sections, growing food from a dozen worlds. The living spaces developed distinct cultural areas where different species could maintain their traditions while sharing common spaces. The children, once so terrified, now played together in a beautiful mixture of languages and games. Owen walked through it all in wonder. Hangar Bay 7 had been a joke. Empty space, wasted potential, human inefficiency made manifest. Now it held 42 souls from 12 species, all learning to build something new from the fragments of what they had lost. Other stations started asking questions. How did Meridian optimize unused space so effectively? What were these human community-building practices that generated such positive results? The requests came from administrators who cared about efficiency numbers, but behind those official queries, Owen heard the real question. Is sanctuary possible? He answered each one honestly. They weren't optimizing. They were creating space for life. They weren't maximizing efficiency. They were prioritizing compassion. The responses varied. Some stations dismissed it as typical human sentimentality. Others grew quiet, and Owen knew they were thinking about their own empty spaces and the people who needed them. On the 6-month anniversary of Shiva's arrival, the sanctuary held a festival. Every species contributed something. The Kethran sang harmonies that made the air shimmer. The Vortian demonstrated traditional combat forms transformed into dance. The Rathani led meditations. The humans provided food that ranged from adequate to delicious, all of it shared freely. Bate found Owen standing at the edge of the celebration, watching everything with the expression of someone who still couldn't quite believe it was real. You did this, she said. We did this, Owen corrected, all of us. No, Bates shook her head. We helped, but you're the one who saw an empty hangar and thought, what if this could be full? You're the one who looked at a terrified refugee and thought, what if I just helped? She gestured at the celebration. This exists because you chose compassion when the rules said you shouldn't. Owen thought about that first day, finding Shiva and her younglings hiding in the shadows. He had made a choice then, one that could have cost him everything. Instead, it had given him this. Shiva approached with one of her younglings, the brave one who had given Trell that first piece of fruit so many months ago. My child wants to show you something. The youngling held up a drawing, the kind of simple art that children made everywhere regardless of species. It showed the hangar, recognizable by its high ceiling and wide doors. But the child had drawn it full of colors and shapes representing all the people who lived there now. At the center, a small figure held a wrench and smiled. It's you, Shiva translated. They titled it Home Builder. Owen knelt down to the child's level. It's beautiful, thank you. As he stood, his communicator buzzed. A new message. Another station asking about the cultural preservation program. Another empty space that might become full. Another chance for sanctuary. Owen looked around the hangar one more time. The mocked, wasteful, inefficient human space that everyone had laughed at. Now it held gardens and laughter, healing and hope, 42 different futures that had almost been destroyed by a galaxy that forgot beauty mattered. Henry walked by carrying a tray of fresh vegetables, teaching a group of younglings their names in Standard. Amara was checking Kesef's health while discussing philosophy. Prill was installing new lighting with help from Corvus. Trell was playing a game with children from 4 species, making up rules as they went because play needed no official protocol. This was what humans brought to the galaxy. Not superior technology or greater strength. Not faster ships or better weapons. Just the stubborn, inefficient, absolutely essential belief that empty spaces should be filled with life, that rules should serve compassion, that sanctuary mattered more than efficiency. A new ship appeared on the station's sensors. More refugees, most likely. More people running from a system that valued production over existence. Owen made a note to prepare another section of the hangar. There was always room for one more. That was the point of sanctuary. That was the purpose of beautiful, inefficient, perfectly human spaces. The festival continued into the night, laughter and music filling the hangar that everyone had once mocked. And in that sound, Owen heard the future. A galaxy that might slowly remember that optimization without compassion was just cruelty with better math. One hangar at a time, one refugee at a time, one choice to help at a time. The mocked hangar had become beautiful sanctuary, and the sanctuary's doors would always remain open.